Daniel woke up in a bed that was far too soft, wrapped in bandages that smelled of herbs he could not name. Sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked the crystal spires of the capital. He was alive. That was more than he had expected. Salith was sitting beside his bed. She looked like she had not slept in days. "How long?" Daniel asked. His voice was rough, but at least it worked. 5 days. The physicians were not certain you would wake. Your injuries were severe. She paused. But then again, they were not certain you would survive the neural disruptor either. You seemed to enjoy proving people wrong. Daniel tried to laugh, but it hurt too much. It's a hobby. Salith leaned forward. There is something you should know. While you were unconscious, my mother conducted her own investigation. She found proof of what we suspected. The assassination attempt on the station was not random. It was ordered by someone in this palace. Daniel's eyes sharpened despite his exhaustion. Corvath. Yes, he arranged for the Varathi assassin to target me. He wanted me dead so he could consolidate his position as heir. My mother found communications, financial records, testimony from servants who witnessed things they should not have seen. Salith's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. My own brother tried to kill me. What happens now? Justice. Keth Ari justice. Before Daniel could ask what that meant, the doors opened, and Queen Valthira entered. She moved with the same commanding presence as always, but there was something different in her expression. Something that might have been warmth. You are awake, she said. Good. There is a ceremony today. Your presence is required. Your Majesty, I'm not sure I can stand. Then you will be carried. This cannot wait. An hour later, Daniel found himself in the throne room of the palace, supported by 2 attendants who kept him upright through sheer determination. The room was packed with nobles and officials and dignitaries from across the Kithari Empire. Every eye was on the raised platform where the queen sat. Corvath stood before her in chains. Prince Corvath of House Valthira, the queen said, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. You stand accused of conspiracy to murder your sister, Princess Salith. You stand accused of treason against the royal bloodline. You stand accused of dishonoring everything our house represents. She paused. The evidence is irrefutable. The witnesses are credible. Your guilt is beyond question. Corvath said nothing. His face was a mask of cold fury. By the ancient laws of our people, the punishment for such crimes is death. The queen rose from her throne. But I am not without mercy. You are my son, despite everything. I will not end your life. Her voice hardened. Instead, you are stripped of all titles, all lands, all claims to the throne. You are exiled from Valthis Prime and from every world under our dominion. You are no longer Keth Ari. You are nothing. Corvath's mask cracked. For the first time, Daniel saw fear in those silver eyes. Mother, please. You lost the right to call me that when you tried to kill your sister. The queen gestured to the guards. Take him away. Corvath was dragged from the chamber. He did not go quietly, but his screams faded as the doors closed behind him. The queen turned to face the crowd. Now, there is other business to attend to. She looked directly at Daniel. Daniel Cole, come forward. The attendants helped Daniel walk to the base of the platform. Every step was agony, but he refused to show weakness. Not here. Not now. Kneel, the queen said. Daniel lowered himself to one knee, gritting his teeth against the pain. Daniel Cole, you came to us as a stranger. You saved my daughter's life without thought of reward. You stood against my own son with nothing but your integrity. You faced the trial of worth and proved yourself in ways that shamed those who have lived for centuries. The queen descended from the platform and stood before him. Such service cannot go unrewarded. She drew a blade from her robes. It was ancient, the metal gleaming with an inner light. I offer you a position that has not been granted to an outsider in over 1,000 years. Guardian of the Third Princess, Protector of House Valthera, Voice of the Crown in matters of honor and truth. She held the blade before him. Do you accept? Daniel looked at Salith. She stood at the edge of the platform, her silver eyes bright with emotion. She gave him the smallest nod. He looked back at the Queen. Yes, Your Majesty. I accept. The Queen touched the blade to his shoulder. Left side, then right. Then rise, Daniel Cole, Guardian of the Third Princess. Let all who witness this know that he stands under the protection of the Cathari throne. His enemies are enemies. His honor is our honor. His life is bound to ours until death or dismissal. Daniel rose. The pain was still there, but it felt distant now, overwhelmed by something larger. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, they began to applaud. It started with a few hands and spread until the entire chamber rang with it. 1,000 Cathari, acknowledging a human as one of their own. Later that evening, Daniel stood on a balcony overlooking the capital. The 3 moons were rising, and the crystal spires glowed with reflected light. Salith stood beside him. You could have left, she said quietly. After the trial. After everything. You could have gone home. I know. Why did you stay? Daniel thought about it. He thought about the life he had left behind, the empty apartment, and the meaningless contracts, and the years of just existing without really living. He thought about what it felt like to finally belong somewhere, to finally matter. Because some things are worth staying for, he said. You're worth staying for. Salith was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. My mother spoke to me privately after the ceremony. She said something interesting. What? She said that humanity is young, that your species is often underestimated, that most of the galaxy sees you as primitives who stumbled into space before you were ready. Salith turned to face him. But she also said she has seen what one human can do when he chooses to stand for something beyond himself. And she believes that if one human can do that, perhaps all of them can. That's a lot of pressure. Perhaps. But she also said this. Salith's silver eyes met his. She said that when humanity needs allies among the stars, the Cathari will remember. They will remember Daniel Cole, and they will not let humanity stand alone. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Not pain this time. Something else. Something like hope. I didn't do any of this for politics or alliances. I know. That is why it matters. You did it because it was right. Because you saw someone who needed help, and you gave it without asking for anything in return. She squeezed his hand. That is what makes humanity special, Daniel. Not your technology, or your weapons, or your ambition. Your hearts. Your stubborn, impossible, beautiful hearts. Daniel looked out at the alien sky with its 3 moons and its unfamiliar stars. He thought about how far he had come, how much he had risked, how much he had gained. He had stood for an alien princess when no one else would, and in return, a queen had declared that he would never fall alone. It was not a bad trade, all things considered. Not bad at all. So, what happens now? He asked. Salith smiled. It was the first real smile he had ever seen from her. Now? We live. We protect each other. We face whatever comes next together. She leaned against his shoulder. And we prove to the galaxy that humans and Cathari can be more than allies. We can be friends. Daniel smiled back. I can work with that. They stood together on the balcony as the moons rose higher and the city glowed beneath them. 2 beings from different worlds, bound by choice and honor and something that might someday become more. The stars stretched out before them, vast and full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel Cole felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The summons came at dawn. Daniel was escorted from his chambers by 4 palace guards, who said nothing, but whose grips on their weapons made their feelings clear. He was taken through corridors he had never seen before, deeper into the palace, until they reached a vast circular chamber with walls of black stone and a ceiling that seemed to open onto the stars themselves. This was the Hall of Ancestors. He had heard whispers about this place. It was where the Kethari settled matters of honor and blood. It was where people came to prove their worth or die trying. Prince Corveth was waiting for him. The prince stood in the center of the chamber with a crowd of nobles arranged behind him. His silver eyes were cold with triumph. He wore formal robes of deep crimson, and his posture radiated contempt. "The human arrives," Corvus said, his voice echoing through the hall. "The primitive creature who dares to walk among us. The beast who has bewitched my sister and dishonored our house with his presence." Daniel stopped walking. The guards released him and stepped back. "I haven't bewitched anyone," Daniel said calmly, "and I've dishonored nothing. I was invited here by your mother. My mother was deceived. You are not worthy to breathe the same air as Kethari royalty. You are not worthy to look upon my sister. You are nothing but an animal who learned to speak." The crowd murmured. Some looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement. Daniel felt Sayla's presence before he saw her. She pushed through the crowd and stopped at the edge of the chamber, her face pale with fear. "Corvath, stop this," she said. "He has done nothing wrong. He has done everything wrong simply by existing in this place." Corvath turned to face the crowd. "I invoke the ancient law. This human has insulted my honor and the honor of our bloodline. I demand satisfaction. I demand the trial of worth." The crowd went silent. Even the guards seemed shocked that Daniel had heard of the trial of worth. It was an ancient Kethari tradition, a series of tests designed to prove that a challenged party was worthy of the status they claimed. Nobles had used it for centuries to settle disputes and destroy rivals. Few outsiders had ever faced it. None had survived. "You cannot do this," Sayla said, her voice shaking. "He is a guest of the Queen. The Queen is not here, and the law is clear. Any Kethari of noble blood may challenge any being who has been accused of dishonor." Corvath smiled coldly. "Unless the human wishes to leave in disgrace, he can renounce any claim to status or position and crawl back to his primitive world. The choice is his." Every eye in the chamber turned to Daniel. He understood what was happening. Corveth wanted him gone. The prince could not touch Salith directly, not with their mother's protection, but he could remove her only ally. He could humiliate the human and prove that outsiders had no place in the Kethari court. He could break whatever fragile hope Salith had found. Daniel thought about his options. He could leave. No one would blame him. He had no obligation to these people. He owed them nothing. But he thought about Salith standing alone in a world that wanted to destroy her. He thought about the fear in her eyes and the loneliness in her voice. He thought about what it meant to be the kind of person who walked away when things got hard. "I'll take the trial," Daniel said. Corveth's smile widened. "So be it." The trial of worth consisted of 3 challenges: endurance, wisdom, combat. The first challenge began immediately. Daniel was taken to a chamber of ice, a room where the temperature dropped far below freezing. He was stripped of his outer clothing and left standing in the cold while the Kethari watched from heated galleries above. The cold bit into him like knives. His breath turned to frost. His muscles screamed, and his blood felt like it was turning to ice. Most galactic species could not survive such temperatures for more than a few minutes. The Kethari expected him to fall quickly, but Daniel was human. And humans came from Earth. Earth was a death world by galactic standards. A planet of extremes where temperatures ranged from boiling deserts to frozen tundras. A world where predators hunted in every environment and survival required adaptation and endurance. Humans had evolved to handle conditions that would kill most species. Daniel focused on his breathing. He remembered his training, the cold weather exercises that had pushed him to his limits. He thought about his grandmother, who had lived through winters in northern Canada, with nothing but a wood stove and stubborn will. He thought about every ancestor who had survived ice ages and frozen nights and the bitter indifference of nature. An hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. The Cathari stopped talking. They watched in silence as the human continued to stand, shivering but alive, refusing to fall. When they finally ended the challenge, Daniel could barely feel his body. But he was still standing. The second challenge was wisdom. Daniel was brought before Queen Valthera herself, who had arrived during the night to observe. She sat on a raised platform and looked down at him with those ancient silver eyes. "You will answer 3 questions," she said. "There are no right answers. There are only true ones. Speak honestly and you may pass. Lie and you will fail." Daniel nodded. "First question. Why did you save my daughter?" Daniel had been asked this before. He gave the same answer he always gave. Because it was the right thing to do. Nobody deserves to die like that. I saw someone in danger and I acted. There wasn't anything noble about it. I just did what needed doing. The Queen studied him. Second question. What do you want from my daughter? Daniel blinked. I don't want anything from her. She's my friend. Maybe the only real friend I've made since I got here. That's enough. And if she offered you power? Wealth? A position in her household? Then I'd ask her why she thought I needed those things to stay. Daniel met the Queen's eyes. I'm not here for what I can get. I'm here because she's worth protecting. That hasn't changed since the first day I met her. Something flickered in the Queen's expression. She leaned back slightly. Final question. If you knew you would die today, would you still have come? Daniel thought about it carefully. He thought about his life and his choices and the strange path that had led him here. Yes, he said quietly. Some things are worth dying for. Standing up for someone who can't stand alone is one of them. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded once. You have passed the trial of wisdom. The third challenge was combat. A Cathari warrior entered the chamber. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with muscles that moved like cables beneath his blue skin. He carried a staff that crackled with energy, and his eyes held no mercy. Daniel was given a simple wooden rod. Nothing else. The fight lasted 12 minutes. The Cathari warrior was faster, stronger, and more skilled. He struck Daniel again and again, driving him back, knocking him down, breaking bones with precise and devastating blows. Daniel felt his ribs crack. He felt blood running from cuts on his face and arms. He felt his body failing him piece by piece, but he would not stop. Every time he fell, he got back up. Every time the warrior knocked him down, he rose again. The crowd watched in disbelief as the human refused to yield, refused to surrender, refused to accept that he was beaten. The warrior struck him in the chest, and Daniel collapsed to his knees. He could barely see. He could barely breathe. Every part of him screamed to stay down, to give up, to accept defeat. He thought about Salith. He thought about what would happen to her if he failed. He stood up. The warrior raised his staff for the killing blow. But before he could strike, a voice rang through the chamber. Enough. Queen Valthera rose from her seat. Her voice carried absolute authority. The trial is concluded. The warrior stepped back. Daniel swayed on his feet, barely conscious. This human has shown more honor than many who share my blood, the Queen said, her eyes moving to Korvath. He has endured what should have broken him. He has spoken truth when lies would have been easier. He has refused to yield when death itself stood before him. She, descended from her platform and walked to where Daniel stood. Daniel Cole, you have passed the trial of worth. Daniel tried to speak, but no words came. His legs gave out and he fell. But before he hit the ground, he felt hands catch him. Salith was there, holding him up, tears streaming down her face. You impossible fool, she whispered. You wonderful impossible fool. Daniel managed a weak smile. Told you, he said. Hard to kill. Then everything went dark. Velthus Prime was nothing like Earth. Daniel stood on a balcony of the royal palace and looked out at a city that seemed to grow from the ground like a forest of crystal and stone. The buildings twisted upward in spirals that defied gravity. Bridges of light connected towers that were older than human civilization. The sky was a deep purple, and 3 moons hung above the horizon, each one a different shade of silver dot. He had been here for 2 weeks, and he still felt like a child who had wandered into a world that was too big for him. You look troubled, Salith said, appearing beside him. Just thinking. Your planet makes me feel young and small. You are young. Your entire species is young by our standards. The Kethari were building starships when your ancestors were still living in caves. She paused. That is not meant as an insult. I find it fascinating, actually. You have accomplished so much in so little time. We're in a hurry, Daniel said with a slight smile. We don't live as long as you do. Gotta make every year count. Salith nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why you act without thinking. You do not have centuries to weigh your options. Maybe. Or maybe we're just reckless. There is a difference between recklessness and courage. I am beginning to think your species blurs that line deliberately. Daniel laughed. It felt good to laugh. He had not done much of that lately. Being a guest of the royal house was more complicated than he had expected. Everyone was polite to his face, but he could feel the stares when his back was turned. A human in the heart of Kethari power. A primitive creature from a primitive world walking the halls where empires had been built and destroyed. He did not belong here, and everyone knew it, including Sella's siblings. Prince Corveth was the eldest son, tall and cold with eyes like frozen silver. He had looked at Daniel exactly once, a glance that lasted less than a second, and then dismissed him completely. Princess Nalith was the second daughter, and she was worse. She smiled at Daniel like a predator sizing up prey. She asked him questions that seemed innocent but were designed to make him look foolish. She laughed at his answers even when they were not meant to be funny. Daniel had dealt with bullies before. He knew how to keep his head down and wait them out. But something about this felt different. There was real malice behind the mockery. He mentioned it to Salith one evening while they walked through the palace gardens. The plants here glowed softly in the darkness, blues and purples and silvers that made the whole place feel like a dream. My siblings do not want you here, Salith said. You are a reminder that I exist. They would prefer to forget. Why? What did you ever do to them? Salith was quiet for a moment. I was born. That was enough. My mother favored me when I was young. She saw something in me that she did not see in the others. Corvath and Nalith have resented me ever since. That's not your fault. No, but it does not matter. In the games of the Kethari court, fault is irrelevant. Only power matters. And I have none. Daniel frowned. There was something else bothering him, something he had noticed in the past few days. Whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. Servants who looked at Salith with something like pity in their eyes. A tension in the air that he could not quite name. Salith, he said slowly. The assassination attempt on the station. Do you know who was behind it? She stopped walking. Her silver eyes met his, and he saw fear there, quickly hidden. The official report said it was a Vorathi extremist acting alone. That's what the report said. But you don't believe it. She looked away. I have learned not to believe official reports. Daniel took a step closer. Tell me. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. I have enemies in this court, Daniel. Enemies who would benefit if I were no longer alive. The Valrathi was a tool. Someone pointed him at me and gave him the weapon and told him when to strike. Someone here? Someone in the palace? I do not know for certain. I cannot prove anything, but I feel it. I have felt eyes on my back since I was a child. Someone wants me dead, and they will try again. Daniel felt cold anger settle into his chest. He had risked his life for this woman. He had taken a blast that should have killed him. And now he was learning that the real threat was not some random assassin, but someone in her own family. Then we find out who, he said. Salith looked at him with something like desperation. Daniel, no. You do not understand how dangerous this is. If you start asking questions, if you draw attention to yourself, they will destroy you. You are human. You have no protections here. My mother's favor will not save you if you anger the wrong people. Maybe not. But I didn't take that blast just to watch you get killed anyway. He met her eyes. I'm already involved, Salith. I might as well see it through. You could die. Could have died already. Didn't. Turns out I'm hard to kill. She stared at him for a long moment. Then something in her expression cracked, and he saw gratitude there, raw and overwhelming. You are the strangest creature I have ever met, Daniel Cole. Keep saying that. I'm starting to think it's a compliment. Over the next few days, Daniel started paying closer attention. He watched the servants and the guards and the nobles who drifted through the palace. He listened to conversations when people thought he could not understand them. He noted who spoke to whom and who avoided whom and who looked at Salith with hatred in their eyes. A picture began to form. It was incomplete and hazy, but certain details stood out. Prince Korvath had met privately with a Valrathi delegation 3 weeks before the assassination attempt. Princess Nalith had made comments about how convenient it would be if Salith suffered an accident far from home. A senior member of the palace guard had been transferred to a distant posting immediately after the attack. As if someone wanted him out of reach. Daniel. As if someone wanted him. Daniel gathered the pieces and fitted them together, and did not like what he saw. He found Salith in her chambers on the 5th day and told her what he had learned. Korvath, she said quietly. My own brother. I can't prove it yet, but the pieces fit. Salith closed her eyes. I always knew he hated me. I did not think he would go this far. What do we do now? She opened her eyes, and there was something new in them. Something hard and determined. We find proof. And then we go to my mother. Daniel nodded. Then that's what we'll do. He had come here as a guest. He was leaving as something else entirely. A protector. An ally. A man who had chosen a side in a game. He barely understood. The only question now was whether he would survive long enough to see it through. Daniel spent another week in the medical bay before the physicians declared him fit to walk. His muscles still ached and his nerves still felt like they were firing wrong, but he could move without falling over, and that was good enough for him. He had never been good at sitting still. Princess Salith visited him every day. She said it was because of the life debt, but Daniel suspected there was more to it. She seemed lonely in a way that had nothing to do with being alone. She was surrounded by servants and guards and officials, but none of them really saw her. They saw her title and her bloodline, and her political insignificance. They did not see the person underneath. Daniel saw her. Maybe that was why she kept coming back. Tell me about Earth, she said one afternoon while Daniel was doing stretches the physicians had prescribed. What do you want to know? Everything. I have read files, but files do not capture the truth of a place. Daniel thought about it. It's loud, crowded. We've got 8 billion people on one planet, and we're still figuring out how to get along with each other. The oceans are blue, and the forests are green, and the deserts are the most beautiful shade of gold you've ever seen at sunset. It sounds chaotic. It is. It is. But that's what makes it interesting. He finished his stretches and sat down across from her. What about your homeworld? Vailthus Prime? It is old, Saleth said. Everything is old. The buildings were built before humans discovered fire. The traditions were set before your species learned to write. We do not change because we have already found the correct way to do everything. She paused. Or so we tell ourselves. You don't sound convinced. She looked away. I am the third daughter. My opinions do not matter. Before Daniel could respond, the door opened, and a Kethari guard stepped in. He was tall, even by their standards, and his face was hard as stone. Princess, the Queen's shuttle has arrived. She commands your presence immediately. Both of you. Sayla stood. Her whole bearing changed in an instant. She went from the tired, lonely woman Daniel had been talking to into something rigid and formal. A princess putting on her mask. Come, Daniel Cole. It is time for you to meet my mother. The Queen's shuttle was docked in the most secure bay on the station. Daniel had to pass through 6 security checkpoints just to reach the outer doors. His credentials were scanned, and his identity was verified, and his weapons were confiscated. By the time he reached the audience chamber, he felt more naked than he had since basic training. Queen Valthera was waiting for them. She sat on a raised chair that was not quite a throne, but close enough to make the point. She was taller than her daughter, and her blue skin was darker, almost the color of a midnight sky. Her silver eyes held a sharpness that made Daniel feel like she could see straight through him. She wore armor rather than robes, delicate plates of silver and gold that covered her like scales. She looked like a warrior and a ruler and something ancient that had seen empires rise and fall. Daniel had faced enemy soldiers in combat. He had stared down criminals and warlords and beings who could have killed him with a thought. None of them had made him feel as small as Queen Valthera did. Approach, she said. Daniel and Saleth walked forward until they were 10 feet from the throne. Saleth dropped into a deep bow, and Daniel followed her lead, going to one knee the way he would have for a commanding officer. Rise, the Queen said. They stood. The Queen's eyes moved from her daughter to Daniel and stayed there. So, you are the human. Yes, Your Majesty. Daniel Cole, former soldier in your species military. Now a private security contractor. Unremarkable career. Unremarkable record. And yet, she leaned forward slightly. You did something quite remarkable 3 days ago. Daniel was not sure if he should speak, so he stayed quiet. I have reviewed the security footage, the Queen continued. The assassin fired. My daughter's guards were still reaching for their weapons. You were already moving. You did not hesitate. You did not calculate. You simply acted. Her silver eyes narrowed. Why? It was the same question Saleth had asked. Daniel gave the same answer. It was my job. Your contract specified observation and escort. It did not require you to sacrifice yourself. Maybe not. But I saw the threat, and I saw your daughter, and there wasn't really a choice to make. I just did what needed doing. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Daniel felt sweat forming on the back of his neck. Do you know what you have done, human? Among my people, a life debt is not a small thing. You have bound yourself to my daughter, whether you intended to or not. You have placed yourself within my notice. She tilted her head. Most beings spend their lives trying to avoid the attention of the Kethari throne. You have earned it in 3 seconds. I wasn't thinking about politics, Your Majesty. I was thinking about keeping someone alive. Something changed in the Queen's expression. It was subtle, just a slight softening around her eyes, but Daniel caught it. "Yes," she said quietly. "I believe you were." She stood and descended from her chair. Up close, she was even more imposing. She stopped directly in front of Daniel and looked down at him with those ancient silver eyes. "The Cathari do not forget those who shelter our blood. You have done my house a service that cannot be repaid with credits or favors. My daughter lives because of you. That means something to me." Daniel met her gaze. "I'm glad she's safe." "That's enough. It is not enough for me." The Queen turned to Salith. "Daughter, you will return to Valethus Prime to complete your duties there. This human will accompany you as my guest." Salith's eyes widened. "Mother, do not argue. I wish to know more about this species that breeds such strange creatures. And I wish to know more about this particular man who values a stranger's life more than his own." She looked back at Daniel. "You will come to our world, Daniel Cole. You will see how the Cathari live. And perhaps we will both learn something." It was not a request. Daniel understood that clearly. "Yes, Your Majesty." The Queen nodded once and swept past them toward the inner chambers of her shuttle. Salith watched her go with an expression Daniel could not quite read. What just happened? Daniel asked quietly. Salith shook her head slowly. "I am not entirely certain, but I believe my mother has decided that you are interesting. That is either very good or very bad. There is no middle ground with her." "Great," Daniel said. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." Salith almost smiled. "Welcome to my world, Daniel Cole. I hope you survive it." Daniel took a deep breath and tried to ignore the feeling that he had just stepped off a cliff, without knowing how far the fall would be. He had signed up to escort a princess for a few days. Now he was going to an alien homeworld as a guest of its immortal queen. His mother had always said his stubbornness would get him into trouble someday. She had no idea how right she was. Daniel Cole had been working security on Horizon Gate for 3 years, and he thought he had seen everything. The space station floated in neutral territory between a dozen star nations, and every kind of alien walked through its corridors. He had escorted diplomats and merchants and scientists. He had broken up fights between species that had been at war for centuries. He had learned to keep his face blank and his hands ready, and his opinions to himself, but he had never been assigned to protect a princess before. She was Cathari, which meant she stood nearly 7 feet tall with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in dim light. Her eyes were silver, and her hair fell like white silk past her shoulders. She wore robes of deep purple, trimmed with gold, and she moved with the kind of grace that made everyone around her look clumsy. Her name was Salith, and she was the 3rd daughter of Queen Valthera, ruler of one of the oldest empires in the known galaxy. Daniel had read her file before the assignment. 3rd daughter meant she was low in the line of succession. She had no real political power and no military command. She was here for routine trade negotiations that her older siblings considered beneath them. In the eyes of the Cathari court, she was barely worth noticing, but someone still had to keep her alive. Daniel met her at the docking bay when her shuttle arrived. She stepped off the ramp with 2 Cathari guards flanking her, and she looked at Daniel with those silver eyes, and he saw something he did not expect. She looked tired. Not physically tired, but tired in the way people get when they have spent their whole lives being treated as an afterthought. He gave her a small nod. "Princess Salith, I'm Daniel Cole. I'll be your security escort during your stay." She studied him for a moment. "You are human." "Yes, ma'am. I have not met many humans before. Your species is still quite new to the galactic community." "We're learning as we go," Daniel said. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. "Are you not offended that they assigned a single human to guard a Cathari princess?" Daniel shrugged. "I'm good at my job. And I figure you've got your own guards for the formal stuff. I'm just here to make sure nobody causes trouble in the hallways." She tilted her head slightly as if he had said something strange. Then she simply nodded and walked past him into the station. The first 2 days were uneventful. Daniel shadowed the princess at a respectful distance while she attended meetings and formal dinners and endless rounds of negotiations. He watched the way other delegates treated her. The Torvan ambassador interrupted her constantly. The syndicate traders barely acknowledged her presence. Even some of her own Cathari staff seemed to look through her rather than at her. Daniel kept his face blank, but he noticed everything. On the third night, there was a reception in the main diplomatic hall. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species gathered under crystal chandeliers that floated without any visible support. Daniel stood near the wall and watched the crowd while Princess Saleth made polite conversation with a group of minor officials who clearly wished they were talking to someone more important. He saw the assassin before anyone else did. It was a Volrathi, one of the insectoid species from the Outer Rim. It was moving through the crowd with too much purpose, and its compound eyes were fixed on the princess. Daniel saw the neural disruptor appear in its clawed hand, and he did not think. He did not calculate odds or consider consequences. He simply moved. He crossed the distance in 3 seconds and threw himself in front of Saleth just as the Volrathi fired. The blast hit him square in the chest. Neural disruptors were designed to overload the nervous system of most galactic species. They caused instant paralysis followed by cardiac arrest, followed by death. Daniel felt the energy tear through him like fire and ice at the same time. His muscles locked up, and he could not breathe, and the world went white, and then black, and he was falling. He heard screaming somewhere far away. He heard the sounds of a struggle as security forces tackled the assassin. He heard a voice that might have been Saleth calling out something in her own language. Then he heard nothing at all. When Daniel woke up, he was in a medical bay with machines beeping around him and tubes running into his arms. His whole body ached like he had been beaten with hammers. He tried to move, and a wave of pain made him gasp. A face appeared above him. Blue skin, silver eyes. Princess Saleth. "You are awake," she said. Daniel tried to speak, and his voice came out as a croak. "How long?" 3 days. The physician said you should have died. Neural disruptors are fatal to most species within seconds. She paused. It seems human nervous systems are more resistant than anyone knew. Your brain simply refused to stop working. Daniel would have laughed if it would not have hurt so much. Stubborn. That's what my mother always said. Saleth did not smile. She was looking at him with an expression he could not read. "Why did you do it?" "Do what?" "You threw yourself in front of me. You took a blast that should have killed you. You did not hesitate." Daniel thought about it. The truth was, he had not thought about it at all. He had seen the threat, and he had acted. That was all. "It was my job," he said. "Your job was to observe and report. Your job was not to die for someone you met 3 days ago." "Well," Daniel said slowly, "nobody deserves to go out like that. Getting shot at a party by some bug with a grudge. That's no way to die." Saleth stared at him for a long moment. "You are a strange creature, Daniel Cole. I've been told that before." She stood up and smoothed her robes. "Among my people, what you did creates a bond. A life debt. You saved my life at the risk of your own. My honor now demands that I protect yours in return." Daniel blinked. "That's really not necessary. It is not a matter of necessity. It is a matter of what is right." She looked down at him with those silver eyes, and for the first time he saw something warm in them. "Rest now. Recover your strength. My mother has heard of what happened. She wishes to meet the human who shielded her daughter when her own guards were too slow to act. Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with his injuries. Your mother. The Queen. Yes. The Queen who rules an empire that spans 100 star systems. Yes. Daniel closed his eyes. Great. That's just great. Salif made a sound that might have been a laugh. Do not worry, Daniel Cole. My mother does not kill those who save her children. Usually, she left him alone with the beeping machines and the ache in his chest and the strange feeling that his life had just changed in ways he could not begin to understand. Words spread quickly through the station. The human security guard who had taken a lethal blast for an alien princess. The stubborn fool whose brain had refused to die. The man who had earned a life debt from Kethari royalty. Daniel did not know it yet, but he had taken the first step on a path that would lead him further than he ever imagined. He had stood for a princess when no one else would, and now the Queen herself wanted to know why.